Here is our modest little dinner over, here is our frugal dessert on the table, and here is the admirer of England conforming to national customs and making a speech. Toast to your white cliffs of Albion, Mr. Vendale, to your national virtues, your charming climate, and your fascinating women. To your hearths, to your homes, to your habeas corpus, and to all your other institutions. In one word, to England. Heap, 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 hooray!" Obenreizer's voice had barely chanted the last note of the English cheer, the speechless friend had barely drained the last drop out of his glass, when the festive proceedings were interrupted by a modest tap at the door. A woman servant came in and approached her master with a little note in her hand. Obenreizer opened the note with a frown, and after reading it with an expression of genuine annoyance, passed it on to his compatriot and friend. Vendale's spirits rose as he watched these proceedings. Had he found an ally in the annoying little note? Was the long looked for chance actually coming at last? "I am afraid there is no help for it," said Obenreizer, addressing his fellow countryman. "I am afraid we must go." The speechless friend handed back the letter, shrugged his heavy shoulders, and poured himself out a last glass of wine. His fat fingers lingered fondly round the neck of the bottle. They pressed it with a little amatory squeeze at parting. His globular eyes looked dimly, as through an intervening haze, at Vendale and Marguerite. His heavy articulation laboured, and brought forth a whole sentence at a birth. "I think," he said, "I should have liked a little more wine." His breath failed him after that effort. He gasped, and walked to the door. Obenreizer addressed himself to Vendale with an appearance of the deepest distress. "I am so shocked, so confused, so distressed," he began. "A misfortune has happened to one of my compatriots. He is alone. He is ignorant of your language. I and my good friend here have no choice but to go and help him. What can I say in my excuse? How can I describe my affliction at depriving myself in this way of the honour of your company?" He paused, evidently expecting to see Vendale take up his hat and retire. Discerning his opportunity at last, Vendale determined to do nothing of the kind. He met Obenreizer dexterously with Obenreizer's own weapons. "Pray don't distress yourself," he said. "I'll wait here with the greatest pleasure till you come back." Marguerite blushed deeply, and turned away to her embroidery frame in a corner by the window. The film showed itself in Obenreizer's eyes, and the smile came something sourly to Obenreizer's lips. To have told Vendale that there was no reasonable prospect of him coming back in good time, would have been to risk offending a man whose favourable opinion was of solid commercial importance to him. Accepting his defeat with the best possible grace, he declared himself to be equally honoured and delighted by Vendale's proposal. So frank, so friendly, so English! He bustled about, apparently looking for something he wanted, disappeared for a moment through the folding doors communicating with the next room, came back with his hat and coat, and protesting that he would return at the earliest possible moment, embraced Vendale's elbows, and vanished from the scene in company with the speechless friend. Vendale turned to the corner by the window, in which Marguerite had placed herself with her work. There, as if she had dropped from the ceiling, or come up through the floor, there, in the old attitude, with her face to the stove, sat an obstacle that had not been foreseen, in the person of Madame Dor. She half got up, half looked over her broad shoulder at Vendale, and plumped down again. Was she at work? Yes. Cleaning Obenreizer's gloves, as before? No. Darning Obenreizer's stockings. The case was now desperate. Two serious considerations presented themselves to Vendale. Was it possible to put Madame Dor into the stove? The stove wouldn't hold her. Was it possible to treat Madame Dor, not as a living woman, but as an article of furniture? Could the mind be brought to contemplate this respectable matron purely in the light of a chest of drawers with a black gauze head dress accidentally left on the top of it? Yes, the mind could be brought to do that. With a comparatively trifling effort, Vendale's mind did it. As he took his place on the old fashioned window seat, close by Marguerite and her embroidery, a slight movement appeared in the chest of drawers, but no remark issued from it. Let it be remembered that solid furniture is not easy to move, and that it has this advantage in consequence: there is no fear of upsetting it. Unusually silent and unusually constrained, with the bright colour fast fading from her face, with a feverish energy possessing her fingers, the pretty Marguerite bent over her embroidery, and worked as if her life depended on it. Hardly less agitated himself, Vendale felt the importance of leading her very gently to the avowal which he was eager to make, to the other sweeter avowal still, which he was longing to hear. A woman's love is never to be taken by storm. It yields insensibly to a system of gradual approach. It ventures by the roundabout way, and listens to the low voice. Vendale led her memory back to their past meetings when they were travelling together in Switzerland. They revived the impressions, they recalled the events of the happy bygone time. Little by little Marguerite's constraint vanished. She smiled. She was interested. She looked at Vendale. She grew idle with her needle. She made false stitches in her work. Their voices sank lower and lower, their faces bent nearer and nearer to each other as they spoke. And Madame Dor? Madame Dor behaved like an angel. She never looked round. She never said a word. She went on with Obenreizer's stockings. Pulling each stocking up tight over her left arm, and holding that arm aloft from time to time to catch the light on her work, there were moments, delicate and indescribable moments, when Madame Dor appeared to be sitting upside down, and contemplating one of her own respectable legs elevated in the air. As the minutes wore on, these elevations followed each other at longer and longer intervals. Now and again the black gauze head dress nodded, dropped forward, recovered itself. A little heap of stockings slid softly from Madame Dor's lap, and remained unnoticed on the floor. A prodigious ball of worsted followed the stockings, and rolled lazily under the table. The black gauze head dress nodded, dropped forward, recovered itself, nodded again, dropped forward again, and recovered itself no more. A composite sound, partly as of the purring of an immense cat, partly as of the planing of a soft board, rose over the hushed voices of the lovers, and hummed at regular intervals through the room. Nature and Madame Dor had combined together in Vendale's interests. The best of women was asleep. Marguerite rose to stop, not the snoring, let us say the audible repose of Madame Dor. Vendale laid his hand on her arm, and pressed her back gently into her chair. "Don't disturb her," he whispered. "I have been waiting to tell you a secret. Let me tell it now." Marguerite resumed her seat. She tried to resume her needle. It was useless. Her eyes failed her, her hand failed her. She could find nothing. "We have been talking," said Vendale, "of the happy time when we first met, and first travelled together. I have a confession to make. I have been concealing something. When we spoke of my first visit to Switzerland, I told you of all the impressions I had brought back with me to England, except